Her tires screamed across my lawn again, and this time I smiled. For 8 straight weeks, that silver Range Rover tore across my corner lot like it was part of her morning routine. Grass flying, sprinklers cracking, and my patience burning out one tread mark at a time. Every single day, 7:47 a.m. sharp, she'd slice through my property like the rules of geometry didn't apply to her. You're watching Tomato Tales, where karma doesn't knock. It roars through your lawn and dares you to stop it. I'd warned her, twice, first with words, then with signs. She laughed at both. So now, as her headlights cut through the dawn and that familiar growl echoed down the street, I stood on my porch, coffee in one hand, remote in the other. Because this morning, she wasn't the only one with a plan. The cameras were live, the lights were armed, and the ground beneath her arrogance was no longer just grass. I'd spent 3 nights wiring that corner like it was a stage. Low-voltage floodlights, motion sensors, and a silent network of cables tucked neatly under the soil. I called it my courtesy lighting system. It wasn't dangerous, just illuminating. When her car hit the sensors, the entire corner would light up like a movie premiere. 8,000 lumens of truth shining straight through entitlement. The first time she'd cut across my property, I'd told myself it was a mistake. The second time, a misunderstanding. The third, intent. I even walked over once, introduced myself like a civilized man. "Morning, I'm Evan Reyes, new homeowner on the corner. I think you've been—" She interrupted with that tone only people born on third base seem to master. "Oh, that? Maybe you shouldn't plant so close to the road if you can't handle a little traffic." That smile. Cold, sharp, deliberate. "My husband built half this neighborhood," she added. "We're on the HOA board, Mr. Reyes. Be careful about who you accuse." That's when I realized she didn't see me as a neighbor. She saw me as an obstacle. And in my world, obstacles can be designed around or reinforced, so I got to work. Late nights in the garage, blueprint on the workbench, soldering iron hissing beside my coffee mug. Every connection was watertight, every line hidden perfectly beneath the turf. She'd never know what hit her, or rather, what she hit first. When the morning came, I was ready. The cold air carried that faint smell of wet earth and static, the kind that hums right before a storm. My camera blinked red, her headlights appeared, and just like that, Lydia Crane came roaring around the bend, late, loud, and utterly predictable. What happened next didn't just stop her in her tracks. It sparked a neighborhood war she couldn't control. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every shortcut comes with a price. Hit subscribe, tap that bell icon, and get ready. The roar of her engine cut through the morning fog. A sound I'd come to recognize like a bad song stuck on repeat. Lydia Crane, queen of entitlement, came flying down the bend as if she was late to her own coronation. My camera light blinked red. Recording, time-stamped, ready. I raised my mug, the bitter scent of black coffee mixing with the cold air, and whispered to myself, "Showtime." The silver Range Rover lunged forward, tires gripping wet asphalt before dipping onto my corner lot, her favorite shortcut. But this time the rules had changed. The moment her wheels broke that invisible line, the motion sensors triggered. Flash, 8 floodlights detonated into brilliance, slicing through the dawn like lightning. Her windshield became a wall of blinding white, and the squeal of brakes followed, long, sharp, desperate. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. Thud, not catastrophic, not deadly, just the crisp crunch of momentum meeting immovable design. The car jerked sideways, her pride dented harder than her bumper. Steam hissed from the front grille as the Range Rover leaned awkwardly in the dirt. I stepped off the porch, every footstep deliberate, calm. "Morning, Mrs. Crane," I called out, voice level. "Bit slippery out here today, isn't it?" She threw open her door like she was exiting a courtroom drama, sunglasses tilted, rage radiating off her in waves. "You? What the hell did you do?" "You set me up." I pointed to the floodlights still glowing across the lawn. "Installed safety lighting. Property protection, all code compliant. You just found out what it's like to drive through private land in high definition." Her eyes darted from the lights to the camera mounted under my eave, the red recording LED blinking like an accusation. "This is harassment," she hissed. "You can't just build traps on HOA property." "Funny," I said, pulling the folded survey papers from my jacket pocket. "According to these, that patch of grass you love so much belongs to me, not your HOA." She froze for half a beat, processing that her entire argument had just hit a concrete wall. Then came the classic Karen deflection, denial. "My husband built this neighborhood. You're making a mistake you'll regret," I smiled. "You'd be surprised how much I plan before I wire anything." Behind her, neighbors' curtains shifted. Someone's dog barked. The quiet street had found its morning entertainment. Lydia climbed back into her car, revving it angrily before realizing one tire was half sunk into the turf. She peeled off, mud spitting behind her like punctuation marks of defeat. I watched her go, my reflection glowing faintly in the floodlight glare. I knew this wasn't over. People like Lydia don't lose, they reload. The Range Rover might have limped away, but that was just round one, because when her pride took the hit, her revenge plan started brewing. You're watching Tomato Tales, where arrogance always drives itself into a wall. When arrogance takes a hit, it doesn't surrender. It plots. Lydia Crane was plotting before her cracked bumper even cooled. The next morning, I found a folded letter in my mailbox. HOA stationery, gold crest and all. Complaint of excessive lighting, safety violations, and property disturbance. Signed by none other than L. Crane, HOA secretary. The irony hit harder than the Range Rover. Apparently, my unauthorized electrical setup was creating hazards and disturbing community harmony. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. 30 years as a licensed electrician, hundreds of municipal permits under my belt, and she thought she'd catch me on a code violation? But her move told me everything I needed to know. Lydia wasn't done. She'd traded her steering wheel for paperwork and turned the HOA into a weapon. That night, the neighborhood slept. I didn't. I was in the garage tightening bolts on a new set of weatherproof mounts when my security system chirped. Motion detected. I tapped my phone and watched the live feed. There she was, all black. Hoodie, gloves, boots, and suburban ninja cosplay. Lydia Crane crawling through my flower bed like a raccoon with a grudge. One by one, she started kicking over my floodlights, muttering curses that would make a sailor blush. The footage was beautiful. Crystal clear night vision, time-stamped. Every act of vandalism recorded in cinematic detail. What Lydia didn't know was that I'd built redundancy into the system. 2 separate power loops, one on battery backup, so when she ripped the first circuit, the second one kicked in. Click. 8,000 lumens of truth erupted across the lawn. She froze mid-kick, pupils shrinking under the glare. My camera caught it all. The exact second arrogance turned into fear. I stepped outside, slow and calm, letting the porch light silhouette me. "Evening, Mrs. Crane, doing a little gardening at midnight?" She stammered, something between rage and panic. "This is harassment." "You're spying on me." "You're on my property," I said flatly, gesturing to the blinking camera. "And I'd be careful. This system has audio recording, too." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, like a fish realizing the hook was real. She backed away, muttering threats about her husband and lawyers. But the damage was done, and I had evidence. The next morning, I filed a vandalism report and forwarded the footage to my insurance company. The agent's laughter was the highlight of my week. "Mr. Reyes," he said, "if she keeps this up, you'll own her car by spring." By the afternoon, half the neighborhood had heard the story. Mrs. Patterson from across the street stopped by with cookies and gossip. "That woman's been a menace for years," she said. "Tried to fine me for planting tulips the wrong color. You might finally be the one to stop her." I smiled, glancing toward Lydia's house, curtains twitching, blinds snapping shut. She thought she'd scare me off. Instead, she'd given me the best idea I'd had in years. Because when you pick a fight with someone who builds for a living, you should remember, some foundations go deeper than you think. She'd destroyed my lights, but she'd just illuminated something bigger, proof that this war wasn't about grass anymore. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every act of revenge wires itself into karma. Hit subscribe, tap the bell icon, and stick around. I stop defending and start engineering justice. By sunrise, Lydia Crane wasn't just my neighbor. She was my full-time problem. And like every problem I've ever faced, I started by tracing the wires back to the source. That morning, while I repaired the lights she'd kicked apart, my insurance adjuster arrived to document the damage. He wasn't your typical clipboard and smile type, more like a forensic accountant with a laser measure. "Mr. Reyes," he said, scanning the edge of the lawn, "your boundary markers look off. You might want a proper survey done." That single sentence flipped the circuit in my head. I'd assumed every stake in the ground was gospel. Turns out some people rewrite the scriptures when no one's watching. I called Pete Larkin, an old friend from my construction days turned land surveyor. His voice crackled through the speaker, gravelly as ever. "Evan, you finally buy yourself trouble, huh? I'll swing by tomorrow. Union discount applies, unless you've pissed off the HOA again." That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept rewinding through every confrontation, every smug smile Lydia had thrown my way. Her husband's company, Crane and Cobra Developments, had built half the houses here. What if this wasn't just arrogance? What if it was theft, engineered and buried under layers of concrete and paperwork? When Pete arrived the next morning, the air smelled like rain and revelation. He and his crew unloaded their tripods and scanners, bright orange vests flashing like beacons of truth. The sharp clicks of their instruments echoed across the cul-de-sac, pure music to me. 2 hours later, Pete's face said it all. "Evan," he muttered, pointing to the glowing lines on his digital pad, "your property runs 18 feet further than what's marked." 18. Not inches, feet. And that fancy retaining wall of hers? He pointed toward Lydia's decorative stone masterpiece. 4 feet onto your land. It hit me like current through copper, clean, undeniable, and hot. Lydia hadn't just been driving across my grass. She'd been trespassing across land her husband's company stole. Pete chuckled darkly. "You realize what this means, right? Every time she cut that corner, she wasn't breaking your grass. She was breaking the law." I looked out at the fresh spray paint marking the real border, bright orange lines cutting through her illusion of control. My mind raced ahead. Legal steps, evidence chains, potential court filings, and yes, one permanent fix that didn't involve paperwork. That night I drafted blueprints. Not for lights this time, for something stronger. Something immovable. The kind of structure that doesn't just stop tires. Stops arrogance dead in its tracks. She thought she'd stolen a strip of land. What she really did was give me the perfect spot to build my revenge. You're watching Tomato Tales, where every story proves karma always checks the blueprints first. Hit subscribe, tap that bell icon, and don't miss the foundation for payback starts to cure in concrete. By the time Pete's spray paint dried on my newly reclaimed property lines, my patience had set like quick mix cement. Lydia Crane had stolen 18 feet of land and years of peace. Now it was my turn to pour something that would last longer than her ego. I spent the evening sketching blueprints at my kitchen table. Coffee rings stained the paper, but every measurement was perfect. I wasn't planning a fence or a wall. No, fences can be cut, walls can be climbed, I wanted something immovable, something that spoke the language of permanence. A decorative concrete bollard. That's what I called it. Harmless, legal, elegant, but engineered like a bunker. I called my old supplier at Metro Ready Mix, a guy named Miguel who'd poured foundations with me on jobs years back. "Evan, you still building fortresses?" He joked over the phone. "Not fortresses," I said. "Just one unshakable reminder of boundaries." We settled on specs. 42 inches tall, 8 inches thick, rebar core, granite cap. 5-foot deep foundation, 4,000 psi concrete. In layman's terms, the Range Rover could kiss it, but it wasn't moving an inch. The next morning, I called Sarah Kim, a real estate attorney known for chewing up shady developers for breakfast. I showed her the new survey and explained my landscaping project. She grinned like she'd just found a winning case file. "Decorative landscaping is fully protected," she said. "Install it inside your property line, meet safety standards, and it's untouchable. If she hits it, that's her insurance problem." That was all the legal clearance I needed for 2 days. I prepped the site. Marked the spot where Lydia's tire tracks crossed the same arc each morning. Dug down 5 feet straight and true. Rebar skeleton in, cross-braced, anchored. When Miguel's truck arrived, the drum turning like a slow heartbeat, I felt that old rush from years on job sites. We poured the mix, thick and gray, each shovel of concrete swallowing my frustration. By dusk, the foundation was curing under the orange sky, smooth and silent. I wiped my hands, watching the surface harden. Not just concrete, but closure. To the untrained eye, it had looked like garden art. To a speeding SUV, it had looked like the hand of karma. When Miguel packed up, he clapped my shoulder. "This thing'll be here long after both of us are gone," he said. "That's the plan," I replied. "Some lessons need to last." She took my lawn. I built a monument she couldn't ignore. And soon enough, her morning drive would turn into the most expensive shortcut of her life. 3 days later, the concrete had set, smooth, solid, and beautiful. To anyone passing by, the bollard looked like a tasteful lawn feature. A granite-topped cylinder framed by small solar lights and surrounded by fresh mulch. Nothing aggressive, nothing illegal, just deliberate. I'd even added a flower ring around it. A soft halo of marigolds and lavender. That touch was for Maya, who loved when strength looked gentle. She smiled from the window as I adjusted the lights. "It's perfect," she said quietly. "Not yet," I replied. "But it will be, because I knew Lydia Crane's routine by heart now. 7:47 a.m. sharp. Predictable, mechanical, like a broken record that refused to stop skipping. And sure enough, on the 4th morning, the symphony began again. The growl of the Range Rover, the sharp hum of tires, the arrogance of speed. I sipped my coffee and waited. The silver SUV came slicing around the corner, sun flashing off its hood. Lydia didn't slow down. Not one bit. And that was the problem with people like her. They never see what's right in front of them until it stops them cold. Bang! A metallic crack split the air. The Range Rover lurched forward, then bounced back like it had hit a brick wall because, well, it kind of had. The front bumper crumpled. The grille folded in on itself. Steam shot upward, curling in the morning light like ghostly applause. She stumbled out, clutching her phone, eyes wide with disbelief. The marigolds around the bollard didn't even flinch. "What did you do?" she screamed, voice echoing off the houses. "You sabotaged me." I stepped down from the porch, calm as a man clocking out after a long day. "No sabotage, Mrs. Crane, just landscaping. You'll find it's on my property and surveyed and certified. This is insane. You could have killed me." I gestured to the granite post, still perfectly intact. "If you were driving within the speed limit, you'd have stopped 20 feet sooner. Maybe next time, treat a stop sign like it's not optional." Neighbors started peeking through blinds, whispering behind curtains. The quiet street had become a courtroom, and Lydia stood center stage with the evidence bent around her car. She stomped her heel, pointing like she was summoning lightning. You'll pay for this. My husband's lawyers will already spoken to mine, I cut in. And the police who will love the footage of you destroying my lawn last week. Oh, and the new video? This one's even better. It's high-definition karma. Her jaw trembled. For the first time she had no words. Just anger, humiliation, and a smoking SUV stuck halfway across my property line. I turned back toward my porch, voice steady as I tossed the final line over my shoulder. Drive safe, Mrs. Crane. Boundaries can be expensive when you ignore them. Behind me, the marigolds danced softly in the breeze, untouchable. The impact might have bent steel, but what came next would bend the whole neighborhood, because Lydia wasn't done losing yet. By the following Monday, I wasn't just the guy with the concrete post. I was the talk of Brookfield Crossing. Every neighbor had an opinion. Half of them applauded me in whispers. The other half tiptoed around, afraid the HOA would turn their gaze next. And right on cue, the HOA struck. At 9 a.m., a crisp envelope appeared on my doorstep, sealed in that familiar gold-embossed crest. Inside, a formal notice of violation. Unapproved permanent structure. Non-conforming landscaping installation. Failure to maintain neighborhood aesthetics. I could almost hear Lydia dictating the letter, each word dipped in venom. At the bottom, signed and stamped, L. Crane, HOA Secretary. I laughed out loud. Of course, I muttered. She hits my property, breaks my lawn, and now I'm the one out of compliance. Maya peeked out from the kitchen doorway, her tone gentle but tired. Evan, don't let her pull you into another fight. I smiled. This isn't a fight anymore, honey. It's a system check. That afternoon, I walked into the HOA office with the envelope in hand. Their building was as predictable as their rules. Sterile beige walls, motivational quotes, and a receptionist who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Meeting with the board, I said, sliding the notice across the counter. Tell them Evan Reyes is here to discuss property violations. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at a long table facing 5 board members. Lydia at the center, of course dressed like she was auditioning for courtroom TV. She leaned forward, voice dripping sugar. Mr. Reyes, thank you for coming. As you can see, we've had multiple complaints about your, monument. I kept my tone even. You mean the safety bollard located entirely within my property line? The one built to city specifications and approved under decorative landscaping guidelines? Her smile faltered for a second. Our records don't... Your records are wrong, I interrupted, dropping a manila folder on the table. Inside were survey documents, legal clearances, and photographic proof, all stamped, dated, notarized. Lydia's lips tightened. The other board members leaned forward, reading silently. One of them, a quiet man in a navy tie, cleared his throat. It seems Mr. Reyes is within his rights. Her eyes shot daggers at him. That can't be correct. His structure has city approval, I added. In fact, the county inspector's copy is right here. I slid over another paper. You will also find evidence of HOA harassment and property vandalism, courtesy of one of your own officers. The room went still. Lydia's face drained of color. She knew exactly what video I meant. I stood calm as ever. I'll give you all copies for your records. I'm sure your legal counsel will appreciate the transparency. As I turned to leave, Lydia hissed under her breath. You think this is over? I smiled without looking back. Oh, it's just getting interesting. By the time I stepped outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, washing the street in light. The same kind of light I'd used to expose the truth. Bright, undeniable, and burning through every lie she'd built. Lydia thought she could hide behind the HOA. But now the board was starting to see her for what she was. And when cornered people start losing power, they do something desperate. When pride cracks, it doesn't crumble quietly. It explodes. And Lydia Crane was about to prove it. After the HOA meeting, I noticed her curtain stayed shut for 2 straight days. Her silver Range Rover, still bearing scars from our introduction, sat motionless in her driveway, like a monument to defeat. But people like Lydia don't sit still forever. They reload. On the 3rd night, just after midnight, my cameras blinked awake. Motion detected. I swiped open the live feed. The grainy night vision shimmered for a second before focusing, and there she was, Lydia, wrapped in a black coat, flashlight in hand, pacing at the edge of my lawn. But she wasn't alone this time. 2 men in construction jackets stood with her, one holding a sledgehammer, the other rolling a dolly stacked with metal tools. My jaw clenched. She wasn't vandalizing this time. She was demolishing. The trio approached the concrete bollard, whispering furiously. The taller man tapped it with the hammer, probably thinking it was hollow. It wasn't. Break it off clean, Lydia hissed. We'll say it was a hazard. I'll file the paperwork in the morning. That was the last sentence she got out before my floodlights snapped on. Whoosh! 8,000 lumens ignited the lawn, burning the night into daylight. Lydia froze mid-command, her accomplices shielding their eyes. The cameras zoomed in automatically, recording every face in perfect clarity. I opened the front door, phone in hand, and pressed play on the police dispatcher. Brookfield emergency, the operator said through the speaker. Yes, I'd like to report trespassing and attempted property damage, I said, loud enough for Lydia to hear. They're still on site. The men bolted immediately, sprinting down the street, tools clattering. Lydia stumbled after them, heels slipping in the grass. She turned back once, face ghost pale in the glare. Evan, this isn't over, she shouted, breath ragged. Oh, it's over, I replied, voice steady. Just not for me. The police arrived 8 minutes later. They took statements, watched the footage, and nodded grimly. We'll need copies of this video, one officer said. And good news, she's already got an open complaint against her. Looks like this helps your case. By sunrise, the entire block knew what happened. Word spread faster than wildfire. Lydia Crane, the queen of the HOA, caught on camera trying to destroy a neighbor's property. Maya sat beside me on the porch that morning, a blanket around her shoulders, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. You think she'll back off now? I looked at the concrete post glowing in the early sun. She might. But pride's a stubborn current. It doesn't stop till it burns itself out. I wasn't wrong. Because as the police reports circulated and her name started appearing in whispers in group chats, Lydia's next move would turn from desperate to downright reckless. The hammer didn't break the concrete. It just cracked her mask. And what she did next would drag the entire neighborhood into chaos. When people like Lydia Crane lose control, they don't apologize. They escalate. And by the time she hit rock bottom, she decided to take everyone else down with her. It started the following Friday night. Faint smell of gasoline drifted through the air, sharp enough to make me pause mid-sentence while I was tinkering with a circuit board in the garage. At first I thought maybe Miguel's concrete truck had leaked fuel on the last pour. But when I stepped outside, I saw movement. A flicker near the curb, a shadow ducking low. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my flashlight, sweeping it across the yard, and there it was. A half-empty gas can resting in the grass right beside my mailbox. My heart pounded. I scanned toward Lydia's property, and for a split second, I caught a glimpse of her. Robe, slippers, hair in disarray, standing at her window watching me. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked unhinged. I didn't call out. I didn't confront her. I went straight back inside, locked the door, and pulled up my security feed. The footage confirmed what I already suspected. She hadn't poured much, just enough to leave a scent and a threat. She wanted fear, not flames. Yet I called the police again, this time directly to the officer who'd handled the vandalism case. He showed up 20 minutes later, flashlight in hand. "She's getting desperate," he said quietly after watching the clip. "We'll classify this as attempted intimidation. You've got enough on file now to pursue a restraining order." By the next morning, the news had spread. Not through gossip this time, but through official channels. Patrol cars cruised by twice before noon, and that afternoon, a letter from the city arrived, confirming an active investigation into HOA misconduct and criminal harassment. I could almost hear the panic rising in Lydia's house from across the street. Her curtains fluttered like nervous eyelids. Her husband's truck disappeared for hours at a time. When he finally approached me that weekend, his face said everything: exhaustion, embarrassment, and the quiet shame of living beside a storm he couldn't control. "Mr. Reyes," he said, voice low. "I didn't know she'd gone that far. She's not well right now." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Get her help. Because if this keeps going, the next call won't be to the HOA. It'll be to the fire marshal." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded again and walked away, shoulders heavy. That night, Maya sat beside me on the porch, her hand resting lightly over mine. "You think it's finally over?" I looked out at the lawn, the bollard, the cameras, the quiet street. For the first time in months, there was peace. "Almost," I said. "But karma takes its time. It's patient, like concrete. Slow to pour, slow to set, but once it does, never cracks." Little did I know, the final act was already curing just beneath the surface. Lydia's reign of chaos was crumbling, but the universe wasn't done teaching her yet. And the final lesson would hit harder than anything I'd built. You're watching Tomato Tales, where karma never sleeps, and concrete justice always leaves a mark. Hit subscribe, tap that bell icon, and don't miss when Lydia's empire of lies collapses in front of the whole neighborhood. By the time the city's investigation went public, Brookfield Crossing was buzzing like a live wire. Word spread faster than gossip could keep up. The HOA's golden couple, the Cranes, were under official review for fraud, harassment, and property tampering. For the first time since moving in, the neighborhood wasn't whispering about me. They were whispering about her. It started with a single email. The county inspector's office released updated zoning maps, and there it was in black and white. My property line fully restored and legally verified. The crane wall, her precious stone boundary, was confirmed to be 4 feet over my land. That discovery rippled like a shockwave through the community. Homeowners started checking their plots. Within a week, 3 other families discovered similar errors, all developments from Crane & Co. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was corruption baked into concrete. The next HOA meeting wasn't held in the office. It was moved to the community center gym to accommodate the crowd. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. When I walked in, rows of folding chairs filled the room. Neighbors whispering, phones recording. Lydia sat up front beside her husband, trying to look composed, but her hands were trembling. The meeting started slow. Budgets, landscaping, the usual filler. Then a resident stood up. "I think we all know why we're here," he said, holding up a stack of printouts. "Property lines, lies, and leadership that's been using this board as a shield." Murmurs turned into voices. Voices turned into anger. Lydia tried to interject, but each word she spoke sounded smaller. Her husband stood too, jaw tight. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, forcing calm. "We'll resolve it." But the crowd had moved past politeness. They'd seen the surveys, the reports, the police notes. Someone shouted, "We saw the video. You tried to destroy his property." The silence that followed was heavy. Lydia's face went pale. Her husband sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. Finally, the board's vice president, a woman who'd been quiet all evening, stood up. "Effective immediately," she said. "Lydia Crane is suspended from her role pending investigation. The HOA will cooperate fully with city officials. Lydia's eyes darted toward me. For the first time, there was no venom, just disbelief. The same woman who'd ruled this place like a suburban monarch was watching her kingdom fall one brick at a time. As the crowd began to disperse, she stormed toward me, voice cracking. "You think you've won, don't you? You've ruined everything." I met her glare with calm. "No, Lydia," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself. I just turned the lights on so everyone could see it. When I stepped outside, the cool night air felt cleaner somehow, like the whole street had exhaled. The floodlights on my lawn flicked on automatically, washing the bollard in a golden glow. Maya slipped her hand into mine. "Looks like the neighborhood's finally found its peace," she said. "Not peace," I replied. "Balance. Peace is fragile. Balance lasts." As we stood there, the sound of a tow truck echoed down the street. Lydia's silver Range Rover being hauled away, bumper still dented, pride still shattered. The empire she built on entitlement finally collapsed. But karma wasn't quite done pouring the foundation for her downfall. One more surprise was still waiting. For a week, Brookfield Crossing was quiet. Unnervingly quiet. No HOA notices in the mail. No condescending smiles. No Range Rover roaring across the corner at dawn. You could almost believe the storm had passed. But storms rarely end clean. They just circle back for one last strike. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was in the garage tuning a small generator when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole stood two officers, their uniforms crisp, their expressions unreadable. My stomach tightened. "Mr. Reyes?" one asked. "Yes? We're here regarding an incident report filed by Mrs. Lydia Crane." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. She's claiming her car mysteriously collided with a landscaping feature again?" The officer glanced down at his notepad, hiding a smirk. "Something like that. She's alleging emotional distress and intentional property obstruction." I motioned them inside and handed over a flash drive. "That's every minute of footage from the last 2 months, including the night she tried to demolish my bollard, the gas can by my mailbox, and the HOA meeting. You'll find timestamps, audio logs, everything. They exchanged looks, the kind professionals give when they know the paperwork's about to get very one-sided." "Appreciate the cooperation, sir," one said. "We'll attach this to her case file." When they left, I sat on the porch with Maya, letting the dusk settle in. "She's reaching for straws now," Maya whispered. "She's reaching for power," I replied. "And power always shocks the person who grabs it barehanded." The next day, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Officer Daniels, the same man who'd handled the earlier vandalism call. "Evan, thought you'd like to know." The DA dropped her complaint. "Insufficient evidence. In fact, they're pursuing charges against her. Fraud, harassment, vandalism." The HOA's board turned over emails. "It's not looking good." For a moment I couldn't speak. The tension I'd carried for months finally loosened like a wire cut free. "Thanks, officer," I managed. Guess justice finally tripped the breaker. That night I took Maya for a slow walk around the block. The neighbors waved, not out of pity or gossip, but genuine relief. For the first time, the neighborhood felt united. The air smelled of new grass and quiet victory. When we returned home, I stopped by the bollard, running my hand along the smooth granite top. It had weathered everything. Headlights, sledgehammers, gossip, fear. It stood there exactly as I'd built it, unshaken. A car door slammed in the distance. I turned to see a moving truck parked in front of Lydia's house. Boxes stacked high, curtains gone. The Cranes were leaving. I didn't gloat. I didn't wave. I simply stood under the glow of the porch light and watched as the engine started, tail lights fading into the night. "Guess that's that," Maya said softly. "Yeah," I murmured. Boundaries restored. The concrete glowed faintly under the floodlights, a monument not to revenge but to reason. A reminder that sometimes you don't need to shout to win. You just need to stand your ground long enough for the truth to harden. Lydia's exit might have ended the fight, but karma wasn't finished speaking, and her final bill was still in the mail. 2 weeks passed after the Cranes left Brookfield Crossing, and the neighborhood slowly began to breathe again. The lawns looked greener, the sidewalks cleaner, and for the first time, no one felt like they were living under surveillance disguised as community rules. The HOA board met quietly now, mostly to apologize and rebuild trust. For me, peace felt strange, almost too quiet. Every morning I'd step onto the porch, coffee in hand, waiting for the sound that used to signal war, the growl of a Range Rover. But there was nothing. Just birds, wind, and the soft hum of sprinklers across the street. Then one morning an envelope arrived. No crest, no return address. Just my name written in a shaky hand. Inside was a folded letter and a check. The handwriting was unmistakable. Lydia Crane. Mr. Reyes, I suppose you won't believe this, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I lost more than I ever expected. Not just my home, but my reputation, my company, and maybe the version of myself that used to care about being decent. My husband left last week. He said I should have listened to you. He was right. I'm enclosing a check to cover the damages I caused. You don't have to cash it. Just know that, for the first time in years, I mean it when I say I was wrong. Lydia Crane. I sat there for a long while staring at her words. The check was made out for $10,000. More than enough to repair anything she'd ever damaged. But I didn't cash it. I slid it back into the envelope and tucked it in my desk drawer, between my old licenses and electrical permits. Some things weren't about money. That evening I walked the edge of the lawn, the very spot where her tire tracks used to scar the earth. The grass had grown back thicker, greener, stronger than before. The marigolds bloomed again around the concrete post, their petals catching the glow of the floodlights. Maya joined me, leaning gently against my arm. You going to cash it? I shook my head. No, the check's not the point. The apology is, she smiled softly. You really believe she meant it? Yeah, I said. Eventually everyone hits their bollard. Some just take longer to see it. For the first time I realized what the whole battle had really been about. It wasn't property lines or power plays. It was about respect for space, for people, for limits. Some folks learn it through rules. Others need to meet it head-on. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the bollard's granite top caught the last light of day, golden, steady, unbroken. I raised my mug in a quiet toast. To boundaries, I said softly, and to the people who finally learned to see them. But just when I thought the story was finished, fate flicked the switch one more time, because that letter wasn't Lydia's last move after all. Peace, I've learned, doesn't always mean the current stops flowing. It just runs quieter. For a while, life in Brookfield Crossing hummed that way. The HOA reformed, the neighbors relaxed, and my days fell back into rhythm. Coffee at 7, sprinklers at 8, the world finally steady again. Then came the knock. It was early evening, the kind of calm hour when sunlight turns gold and the air smells like cut grass. I opened the door to find a man in a gray suit holding a slim leather briefcase. Mr. Reyes? He asked politely. Yes, he extended a card. David Crandall, legal representative, Crane & Co. For a second, I thought it was another lawsuit. My chest tightened. But his expression wasn't the smug confidence I'd come to expect from that name. It was weary, respectful. I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Crane, he said. She asked me to deliver this personally. He handed me a sealed manila envelope. Inside was a letter and a document stamped with the county seal. Mr. Reyes, this isn't another apology. It's closure. I've transferred ownership of the disputed section of land entirely into your name, along with a legal statement, retracting all prior complaints. I also included the final permit I filed years ago when my husband's company extended the wall line. I left something inside that document you'll want to see. Elsie, Tucked between the pages was a folded blueprint, the original subdivision plan, dated 15 years ago. And there, in faint pencil, a note scribbled beside Lot 39. Shift boundary 4 FT to road. Crane approval. She'd turned herself in. The paper was proof that the property encroachments were intentional. Not mistakes, not oversights. And by handing it to me, Lydia had burned what little bridge she had left to her husband's empire. I stood there for a long moment, reading the note again, feeling something unexpected. Not victory, closure. The kind that doesn't roar or gloat, but settles like dust after a storm. Maya appeared behind me, resting her hand on my shoulder. "What is it?" "Proof," I said. "Of everything. And what will you do with it?" I folded the blueprint carefully and smiled. "Nothing. It already did what it needed to." We walked to the lawn together, as the sun slipped below the horizon. The marigolds around the bollard swayed in the breeze, gold against the fading light. The floodlights flicked on automatically, soft, steady, perfect. I thought about Lydia Crane somewhere far from here, stripped of her titles, her control, maybe finally facing herself without a neighborhood to hide behind. Some people need the world to collapse before they realize where the cracks began. As the night settled in, I took one last look at the concrete post. Still unbroken, still standing exactly where it belonged. My line, my promise, my peace. "Looks like we can finally rest," Maya whispered. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Justice set, cured, and sealed. And that, my friends, is how arrogance met architecture and lost." You've been watching Tomato Tales, where karma always knows its blueprint. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, or in this case cured solid, hit subscribe, ring that bell icon, and stick around. 'Cause in the world of Tomato Tales, there's always another story waiting to pour.